Today in the 21st century, most people have been taught that the dinosaurs roamed the Earth 65 million years ago and mysteriously died off after a comet hit the Earth. Somehow, over millions of years, the surviving dinosaurs then evolved into the birds of today. This idea, though taught in almost every school and major university, has not been supported with evidence from history or the geologic record. It gives no explanation for the vast fossil graveyards found throughout the world, nor does it explain how many kinds of animals found in the fossil record remain alive to this day. Is there a better explanation? Is there scientific and archaeological evidence that gives a simple explanation for what happened to the dinosaurs? In this documentary, you will be given evidence that the dinosaurs have always existed with man. You will discover that ancient man frequently wrote of interactions with dinosaurs throughout recorded history, and you will see evidence to verify this. You will also be shown evidence that there could even be some dinosaurs that have survived to the present day. Finally, we will examine one of the most accurate and trusted historical records known to man, the Bible. The Bible gives a far different version of what happened in the history of ancient man that caused the extinction of most dinosaurs. We will look at its claims in light of the evidence that has been presented in this documentary. Before we start, consider this. We all have beliefs and ideas about what we think is true. These are called our presuppositions. Sometimes our presuppositions are true and sometimes they are false. When considering evidence, it is very difficult to set aside the presuppositions that we hold and look at evidence with an unbiased open mind. Truth is sometimes very hard to accept, especially if it is contrary to what we have believed. Much of the evidence that you will see in this video has been ignored by modern-day science, but a close examination of the evidence will reveal some startling conclusions. In 1841, the first use of the term Dinosauria, meaning terrible lizard, was created by the famous British anatomist and paleontologist Sir Richard Owen. He used the term for the first time at a meeting of the British Association for the Advancement of Science held in Plymouth. After that meeting, the word dinosaur rapidly became a popular term to describe these giant lizards that were being discovered by paleontologists. During the 1800s, after the first discovery of large dinosaur fossils, scientists began to search the rocks for clues to what had happened to these terrible lizards and other creatures that were buried in the earth. Unfortunately, they became focused on the rocks and buried fossils and failed to examine history for evidence of what had happened to these creatures. So what exactly does the historical record reveal about the dinosaurs? Remember that the word dinosaur was not even created until 1841. Even up until 1891, some dictionaries did not contain the word dinosaur. Prior to this, dinosaurs were known by other names. Every culture had names for them. For example, the name that you are probably the most familiar with is dragon. Even up until 1946, the word dragon was found in dictionaries and has in its definition this telling description. Names from other cultures include some of the following. Dragon history is nearly universal throughout the world's ancient cultures. Where did this global concept originate? Why is it so universal among cultures who were separated by continents? How did societies throughout the world describe, record, draw, etch, sew, and carve these creatures with such uniformity if they had not been eyewitnesses of them? Let's first examine the written historical record and then move on to the physical evidence. The reports of dragons range from personal encounter reports and science papers to legendary stories like Beowulf and the Loch Ness Monster. A well-known old science book, the Historia Animalium, claims that dragons were not extinct in the 1500s, but the animals were said to be extremely rare and relatively small by then. In 1572, a scientist named Ulysses Aldrovandus carefully described a small dragon seen along a farm road in northern Italy. The rare creature was killed by the farmer when he struck it on the head with his walking stick. Aldrovandus obtained the dead body and made measurements and a drawing. He even had the animal mounted for a museum. It had a long neck, a very long tail, and a fat body. The skeletons of a number of ancient reptile-like creatures called Tanystropius, have similarities to the basic description that he gave. One dragon story from the ancient land of Sumer in Babylon tells of the hero Gilgamesh. He decided to make a name for himself by traveling to a distant land to cut great cedar trees needed for his city. He reached the forest with 50 volunteers and discovered a huge reptile-like animal which ate trees and reeds. The story simply says that Gilgamesh killed it and cut off its head for a trophy. Thousands of dragon stories and pictures can be found in ancient Chinese books and art. One legend tells about a famous Chinese man named Yu. The story says after the Great Worldwide Flood, Yu surveyed the land of China and divided it into sections. He built channels to drain the water off to the sea and help make the land livable again. Many snakes and dragons were driven off from the marshlands when Yu created the new farmlands. Some old Chinese books even tell of a family that kept dragons and raised them to use their blood and body parts for medicines. In 1611, the emperor appointed the post of royal dragon feeder. An Irish writer recorded an encounter with a large beast with iron-like spikes on its tail, which pointed backwards. Its head had the shape of a horse's, and it had thick legs with strong claws. These details match features of dinosaurs like Kentrosaurus and Stegosaurus, which had sharp, pointed spines on their tails, thick legs, strong claws, and long horse-like skulls. The respected Greek explorer and historian Herodotus described small flying reptiles in ancient Egypt and Arabia. These animals sound amazingly like the small pterodactyl Rhamphorhynchus. They had the same snake-like body and bat-like wings. Many had been killed near the city of Buto.
I mean, people seem to have always known about these creatures, and yet we're meant to believe, because geologists have decided that dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago, that's the claim, based on their interpretation of the fossil record, they say that dinosaurs went extinct tens of millions of years before humans ever evolved. Dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. Humans only evolved like a couple of million years ago. So they believe that dinosaurs went extinct tens of millions of years before humans ever walked the earth. So because they've interpreted fossils this way, we're meant to just ignore all of this archaeological evidence, all of these historical records, all of these depictions and carvings. And I just gave you a sampling. If you go and look online, you can find carvings of animals that look like dinosaurs all over the world. In all of these ancient civilizations, you can find records indicating that these peoples knew about these creatures. And yet we're just told to just ignore all of this. That's all fictitious. Don't worry about all those historical records. Dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago because that's how we're interpreting fossils. Don't worry about all of this history. Don't worry about all of this records. This is an enormous amount of historical evidence that people always knew about these creatures. So you kind of get a sense of, when you look at the dinosaur, the dragon's the story here, and how that really, you kind of get a sense of just how far everyone is from the truth, from the true history of the world. Very brief argument, show you some evidence to support the global flood. Probably one of the most substantial bodies of evidence to support that the biblical flood was a real and historical and global scale event are the sedimentary rocks, the flood sediments that cover the world. The world is covered in flood sediments that are hundreds of feet thick, in places that are kilometers thick. Layers of rocks, like you see here exposed to the Grand Canyon, blanket the world. Sandstone, limestone, and shale, all of these three main sedimentary rocks, all form in watery conditions, in flood conditions. And these layers of rocks that you see there at the Grand Canyon can be traced for hundreds and in some cases thousands of miles. They blanket the globe. You can see here in this diagram from the U.S. Geologic Survey, the Grand Canyon over here, the layers that are exposed in the Grand Canyon can be traced for hundreds and in other cases thousands of miles. One layer exposed to the Grand Canyon called the Tepete Sandstone can literally be traced all the way across North America. That one layer of sandstone. What you're looking at are deposits, the result of a major global scale event. When we look at sediments that are forming today, all we find are little localized deposits of sediments being formed. We cannot see them forming on this scale. And this is a general characteristic of the fossil record. Look, shown here again in a diagram by the U.S. Geologic Survey. This diagram shows the layers of the fossil record, what we call the geological column, that are on the surface in North America. And you can see that that is a general characteristic. The layers of rocks that contain fossils can be traced for hundreds and in many cases thousands of miles, all the way from one side of a continent to another. We also find ocean fossils throughout the fossil record. Ocean fossils are everywhere. They're on the tops of every mountain chain in the world, the Andes. Tens of thousands of fossils have been found in this fossil graveyard. Listen to this. Kevin, you got my sound?
Dinosaur Provincial Park in Alberta, Canada, 10,000 Centrosaurus dinosaurs were discovered with alligators and crocodiles.
The animals that we find in the Centrosaurus bone bed include anything that was alive when the Centrosaurus was alive, of course, but they are basically freshwater fish, alligators, crocodiles, mammals, lizards.
This alligator resembles these prehistoric remains, contradicting Darwin's predictions that animals change dramatically over time.
Tens of thousands of fossils all buried together in this one formation. Again, this is actually up in part of the formation that's up in Canada, but tens of thousands, Centrosauruses alone, which are part of your ceratops. Tens of thousands of just one type of dinosaur. We also see many fossils that exhibit an extreme level of preservation. And this, lots of fossils like this, what we call fully articulated fossils. Fossils that have not only all their skeletons still attached and still together, but many that have a lot of soft tissue as well that's been fossilized. And this is obvious. It is obvious, the most obvious interpretation of such fossils is that this is an animal that was buried rapidly by sediments. It is clear evidence that catastrophe took this organism, buried it before it had a chance to decompose, and more specifically, that it was probably killed by the sediments that buried it, preventing it from decomposing normally and allowed it to become a fossil that has a fully articulated skeleton and soft tissue as well. And we see a lot of these that are marine, but we do see even dinosaurs that are fully articulated. Fully articulated dinosaur skeletons are kind of rare because of how big they were, but this is a hadrosaur. And remember, the hadrosaurs were like 50 feet long. And how do you get a hadrosaur fossil that is still all completely intact without that animal dying in some major catastrophe that would bury it by sediment so quickly that it didn't have a chance to decompose normally? Because when animals die, they're picked apart by scavengers. All the flesh is eaten away, the skeleton is disarticulated, and then your decomposition takes place. Bacteria and fungi make work of most of the rest of it. Chemical processes like oxidation break down the bones. Decomposition occurs rapidly. The only way to get fully preserved fossils is if they're buried by sediments quickly. And we do time the global flood as well. So is it possible that they could be on board the ark? The ark was big, 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. The ark was big, but some of these dinosaurs were really big as well. And Could all of those animals fit on board the ark? Well, one of the things we got to remember is that there really weren't a whole lot of dinosaurs. Again, this diagram kind of illustrates the main dinosaur kinds. And within each of these, you do see a great many species. For example, the ceratops. I mean, within the ceratops are a number of ceratops species, but there wouldn't have been, every one of these species didn't need to be on board the ark. Just one representative pair. The Bible says that 2 of every kind of animal was on board the ark, every kind of land animal was on board the ark, and 7 pairs of every clean animal, which were the obligate herbivores, the ones that chewed the cud and had the cloven hoof, the ones that were permissible to eat and they used for sacrifice, that those are the animals that were on there, 7 pairs, but all the unclean animals, which include the reptiles, one pair of reptile, of each kind of reptile would have been on board the ark. So you wouldn't need every kind of ceratops, just one pair of one of those species would need to be on board the ark. Or look at the hadrosaurs. The hadrosaur family includes many species, but again, you wouldn't have put we wouldn't need to have every single species represented on board the ark, just one representative pair. And the Bible says the animals came to Noah to be kept alive. So God specifically chose the animals that were necessary to reintroduce after the flood. These were carefully chosen. But some of these are really big. You know, we've seen these saurischians, the theropods and the sauropods. Some of these are really, really big. What about the size of these dinosaurs? Could they fit on board the ark? The ark was big. Again, 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. It was 3 stories tall and the length of 1.5 football fields. But some of these dinosaurs are really big too, like the size of this T-Rex. But if we look at the sizes of the various Tyrannosaur species, we start to understand that not all of them were as big as the Tyrannosaurus rex. This diagram, kind of hard to read on the screen here. The Tyrannosaurus, the genus Tyrannosaurus is represented, that's best known by the Tyrannosaurus rex, is the one that's red here in this diagram. But there were many tyrannosaurs that were much, much smaller than the biggest. The big ones were the most famous, okay? You get right down to it. You're big. When you're big, you're famous, and that's the case with the dinosaurs too. But not all the tyrannosaurs were as big as the big Tyrannosaurus rex. Some of them a lot smaller. Just see there by comparison with the human, the scale of the human that's there. And we can see the same thing for each of these families. This is the ceratops family. Again, the Triceratops is the biggest of the ceratops. The Triceratops is the one shown here on the far left, the blue one. It's one of the biggest, but there were many ceratops within the ceratops family that are no bigger than a modern day cow. And again, God brought these animals to Noah to be kept alive. He would have chosen the perfect creatures to be on board the ark, to be reintroduced afterwards with good genetic diversity, good ability to survive. One other thing to consider are the growth curves that animals exhibit. Now, I just downloaded this graphic directly off Wikipedia. This is not a doctored graphic. This just shows the growth curve of several dinosaurs, including the Tyrannosaur. Tyrannosaurus there, shown the black curve there, shows a typical growth curve that all organisms go through. Most organisms have this S-shaped growth curve where you get this rapid jump. You grow slow for a little bit and then you hit middle school. And then boom, you know what I mean? You're going through a pair of shoes like every year or so, and that's what you see there. And then again, it tapers off after a period of time. So, and if God sent these animals to Noah, even the biggest, even if he wanted to preserve one of the biggest ones, he wouldn't have sent one to Noah that was at its maximum size. He could very well have chosen one just before that middle school jump in size. I don't think there's a problem. I think if we consider these things, that there weren't a lot of dinosaurs. God didn't need to have every single species represented on board the ark. And if we consider growth curves and these other factors, I think we can definitely argue that the dinosaurs would have been on board the ark also, and then was reintroduced after the flood like all the other animals. But if this is true, then are there any records? I mean, if animals like the dinosaurs were alive after the flood, we should be able to find some archaeological records that humans knew about dinosaurs. typically think of when we think of dragons and the way dragons have been described throughout history. We can find references to these things everywhere. They are on, for example, the Chinese zodiac, the Chinese calendar. Every animal on the Chinese calendar is an animal we know of, an everyday common animal. The only animal that is thought to be fictitious on the Chinese zodiac is the dragon. We find them on flags. This is the flag of the country Wales. It has a dragon. We find them on city seals. For example, this is from a city seal of a city in the Netherlands. We find them everywhere throughout history. Watch this short clip from a video that I found called, if I remember the name of it, In Search of Dragons, I think is just the title of this video. Anyway, watch this.
The dragon is the best known creature that never was. Native Americans, medieval Europeans, ancient Chinese, and Neolithic hunters. Show any of these peoples a picture of a dragon, and they'll instantly recognize it. How could different cultures, isolated by geography and millennia, all invent the same nightmare?
Some people might say a good way to understand the nature of the dragon is to say it simply leaps from the imagination, human imagination. The problem with that is that the dragon is found everywhere, in all different cultures, different climates and whatnot. And there's no way to explain how Eskimos could imagine the same dragon that, let's say, Polynesians would imagine, that a Chinese classical scholar would imagine, that the knights of King Arthur would imagine. So clearly, we're not talking about something that is imagined here.
Jones studies over 100 cultures around the world. And finds that everyone pictures their dragons with the same key attributes.
They're going to be reptilian creatures. They're going to have some kind of wings, usually stunted wings, which indicate the ability to fly. And they're also going to have muzzles and big teeth. Dragons will often have beards or some sort of protrusions from the chin area that's quite common. Also, the dragon tends to be depicted as a creature that has some sort of a toxic breath. The dragon is going to have large eyes, unblinking eyes. In many parts of the world, the word for dragon has to do with the eyes that stare like daggers, like knives. Dragons generally also will have some sort of a horn, but not horns that look like sort of conventional elk or deer. It's a very typical dragon's horn.
Now, this documentary took the approach.
Of the Nazca Indians flourished on the southern coast of Peru from around 1 AD to 750 AD. This culture produced an array of beautiful crafts and technologies such as ceramics, textiles, and geoglyphs. It is still not understood exactly how the Nazca produced their incredible geoglyphs called the Nazca lines. They also produced thousands of carvings on burial stones. These stone carvings, which are known as the Ica stones, are an enigma. There have been over 16,000 of these remarkable stones found over the past 50 years. They contain images of daily life, battle scenes, agriculture practices, medical procedures, advanced technologies, and most amazingly, dinosaurs. Many skeptics have tried to debunk the Ica stones by saying that they are a modern-day creation, but the evidence indicates differently. In 1535, Spanish conquistadors came through Peru in the area where the Nazca Indians had lived. They reported finding stones with strange animals carved on them. The designs and patterns on the stones also indicate that they were authentic from the Nazca culture, and of the 16,000, only about 500 had carvings of dinosaurs on them. Consequently, many of the carvings have nothing to do with the dinosaurs whatever. They were simply observations from everyday life of the Nazca culture. In Acambaro, Mexico, since the 1960s, over 56,000 ancient clay figurines have been discovered. Many of these clay artifacts are sculptures of dinosaurs. The approximate age of these clay figures is around 4,500 years old. Many people have studied these figures, and the opinion of their authenticity is divided. Most who have no preconceived biases believe that they are genuine, but others who believe that the dinosaurs died off millions of years ago state that they remain skeptical in spite of the radiocarbon dating and investigative evidence that points to their authenticity. 16th century Aztecs produced this dragon sculpture. The face resembles a dinosaur like the Tyrannosaurus rex. Several other South American and Central American civilizations have produced similar sculptures. These side-by-side comparisons are very revealing. These Central Andes artifacts bear a striking resemblance to dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex and Ceratosaurus. And these Mexican figurines, created sometime between 300 BC to 300 AD, could be replicas of the dinosaur Ankylosaurus. China, an ancient land shrouded in dragon lore and mystery. The Chinese to the existence of dinosaurs and man together. Take a look at a few more of these amazing artifacts. This amazing cave drawing was found in Wapatki National Park, Arizona. It is thought to be around 1,000 years old. At Bridges National Monument in Utah, the Anasazi Indians made this cave drawing several thousand years ago. This ancient cylinder seal was found in Mesopotamia. In a book by A.M. Myler, written from 1725 to 1727, recounting his travels from Rome to Jerusalem, then to Troy, Egypt, Syria, and Malta, are found pictures of many things that Myler saw and drew as he traveled. This is a drawing of something seen by Myler. It appears to be some sort of flying dragon. Much more likely, it was a breed of pterosaur. Indians in the American Southwest, and also throughout Central and South America, tell stories of the thunderbird that by description and some archaeological evidence could be a pterosaur or pterodactyl. And Indian prayer sticks that are used to this day have the head of a pterodactyl on them. This brief video touches on only a small portion of the physical evidence for the existence of dinosaurs with man, and at the end you will be given references if you wish to investigate further. Of hundreds of eyewitness accounts and information on the continued quest to positively identify the creature. Lake Erie has been home to a number of sightings of strange, unidentified creatures. This small creature was discovered dead along the shore of Lake Erie by a taxidermist named Pete Peterson of Lakewood, Ohio. The creature was 3 feet long, had 4 flippers, a small head, and a long neck. He took the creature and mounted it. The creature appears to be an infant plesiosaur. In 1925, this creature washed up on the coast of California. E.L. Wallace, president of the Natural History Society of British Columbia, said, "My examination of the monster was quite thorough. It had no teeth, its head is large, and its neck full 20 feet long. I would call it a type of plesiosaur." Another witness, Judge W.R. Springer of Santa Cruz, felt the creature was from a prehistoric age. He added his observation: evidence of 2 short feet or flippers, and probably swam with its head high above the water. During the 1930s and 40s, such creatures were spotted many times by fishermen of Monterey's sardine fleet, with one account stating that it was witnessed by one boat's entire crew of 12 men. There have been thousands of confirmed sightings of very large, long-necked serpent-like creatures from the United States, Canada, Scotland, Russia, Norway, English Channel, Brazil, Japan, China, and Sweden. Several unidentified dead creatures of similar description have also been found. Skeptics make excuses for such sightings, but the evidence still remains. The sheer number and also the valid testimonies of people of reputable character make these sightings hard to deny. Found in the deep jungles of the African Congo is the largest swamp in the world. The Likawala Swamp is 55,000 square miles in size. This should give you an idea of just how big the swamp is. The swamp is 80% unexplored. Very few civilized people venture into this swamp because of the harsh conditions. But tribespeople living around the swamp say that there are several creatures that live there that are apparently living dinosaurs. When they are shown pictures of different dinosaurs, they identify without hesitation the Hepatosaur and the Triceratops as creatures that they have observed in the swamp. The Hepatosaur that was identified by the natives has the name Mokele Mbembe. The tribesmen say that the creature lives mostly in the shallows of the swamp and is seen in the very early morning and at dusk. Mokele Mbembe is described as being mostly nocturnal and very territorial. Natives do not like to have encounters with this vicious creature. However, they say that they have killed and eaten the Mokele Mbembe before. Cryptozoologist Roy Mackal has explored portions of the African swamp and has written a book called A Living Dinosaur. The book details the regular encounters that tribal people have with the Mokele Mbembe and the search for evidence of its existence. This creature has been seen by many people, including African natives, explorers from the U.S., an African biologist, and government officials from the Republic of Congo. Unfortunately, because of the harsh environment and the dense swamp, no high-quality pictures have yet been taken of the creature. Around the same region of the Congo, the people tell of a creature they call Ngobu. When the natives are shown pictures of dinosaurs, they identify the creature as being very similar to the Triceratops and the Styracosaurus. It is described as having 6 horns and is known for killing elephants with them. Across the globe in South America, a dinosaur similar to Mokele Mbembe has been seen. For over 200 years, there have been reports of people seeing large reptile creatures that look like the extinct dinosaurs of the textbooks. In 1907, Colonel Percy Fawcett of the British Army was sent to mark the boundary waters between Brazil and Peru. Colonel Fawcett was an officer in the Royal Engineers and was well known as a meticulous recorder of facts. While in the Madre Swamp, Colonel Fawcett saw an animal he believed to be a Diplodocus. He also stated that stories of a creature that looks like the dinosaur Diplodocus were confirmed by many of the tribes east of Ukale. Pterodactyls, flying reptiles which were thought to have gone extinct over 65 million years ago, are seen in many parts of the world today and in the recent past. Many legitimate reports have been recorded over the past 200 years. From San Antonio, Texas to South America in the Amazon rainforest to the islands of Papua New Guinea, people are still seeing these winged reptiles. The creatures have various names in different places throughout the world. In Papua New Guinea there are 3 known species, which are called ropens, indava, and sekebale, and in the Congo they are called Kongamato. These creatures are nocturnal and seldom seen during the day. This has been confirmed the world over. However, there are still a few sightings that occur during the day. The ropen of Papua New Guinea is seen occasionally by the native people. They say that the creature looks like a flying reptile with no feathers. When shown pictures of different birds and dinosaurs, they identify the ropen as looking very much like the pterodactyl. The people of New Guinea say that the ropen is a meat-eating, flying reptile that is mostly nocturnal. Its abdomen glows as if it has some sort of bioluminescent bacteria present in its intestines. In South Africa and Ethiopia, the natives describe a creature similar to the one seen in Papua New Guinea. They call the creature Kongamato. It is often seen in the jungles of South Africa. They are described as being featherless and nocturnal. One account from 1923 from Frank H. Melloland, an explorer and author, states that he collected reports from natives of an aggressive flying reptile they called Kangamato. He said that the natives were occasionally tormented by these creatures and described them as being featherless with smooth skin, having a beak full of teeth and a wingspan of between 4 and 7 feet. When shown illustrations of pterosaurs, Melloland reported, quote, "Every native present immediately and unhesitatingly picked out and identified it as Kangamato." Another account was given by Montana resident Dwayne Hodgkinson. Mr. Hodgkinson was in the Army in 1944 and stationed in New Guinea. While out on a trek to one of the local villages, a friend, a local guide, and Mr. Hodgkinson observed a very large pterodactyl take off from the ground and fly through the air. Mr. Hodgkinson states that he knows what he saw was a pterosaur, and this is a composite sketch of what he says he saw. His eyewitness story can be watched online at youtube.com.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. The Book of Genesis, chapter 1. In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, an herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. And let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful, and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And God blessed them. And God said unto them, be fruitful, and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were